Welcome, everyone. We're just giving everybody a few minutes to join. We're getting a lot of pings for people entering the webinar. This is great. Just a quick reminder that the session is recorded, so thank you for acknowledging. Hey, still many people joining. Please bear with us. Okay, I think 2 minutes past the hour is a good time to start this webinar. Welcome, everybody, to the Maersk Training and Green Marine Group webinar on alternative fuels. Is your crew ready for the energy transition? We are on the cusp of a revolution as our industry transitions to cleaner fuels. Alternative fuels are no longer just a concept, they're becoming a cornerstone in our journey towards decarbonization. In this webinar, let me just move to the next slide. In this webinar, we will explore key challenges in this transition and offer insights into solutions, including hands-on methanol training and real-life scenarios by way of a demo to prepare your crew for the future. Our speakers for today are Dr. Joanna Bakuni, Frederick Stubner from the Green Marine Group, and Jaya Kumar from Maersk Training. Dr. Joanna is the Learning and Development Manager for Maersk Training. She holds a PhD in Organizational Behavior and Leadership and is actively teaching at academic institutions as a professor in maritime HR. Jaya Kumar is a seasoned professional within the Maersk Group. He currently serves as a maritime instructor and subject matter expert at Maersk Training. He specializes in safety and operational excellence with a background as a chief engineer and technical superintendent. Frederick is the chief executive officer at the Green Marine Group. He specializes in methanol and dual fuel technology for marine applications, actively promotes low carbon solutions, and drives innovation in sustainable marine fuel technologies. Thank you, speakers, for joining us today. To kick off our webinar, we just have a little poll that we'd like to run just now, and I will launch this. It is, what are you hoping to learn from this webinar? So what you can do is just type in your keywords, your question, not questions rather, your keywords, what you're hoping to learn from this. Is it new skills? Is it industry insights? Perhaps ways to upskill your crew? Or are you here for the networking? I'm here for that. So just please type in what you would like to learn from this. Go ahead, please. Okay, we see some answers coming in. There's procurement perspectives, new skills, industry insights, safety. That's always a key priority for us at Maersk Training and Green Marine. Fuel handle, sorry, some of these might be typos, I'm not entirely sure. Training offerings, that's very good. That's what we're here for. The green transition, implementation, and knowledge. Fantastic. Wow, this is much better than I expected. Thank you, everybody, for your insights. We are now going to move into the next session of our webinar. But before that, I would like to remind everyone that we do have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please just pop them in there and we'll tackle them at the end, towards the end of the session. So for now, I hand over the floor to Dr. Joanna to take us through our topic.
Morning, good afternoon, or good evening. depending on where you're joining us from today. We are thrilled to have you all here for this webinar. So, for the next part of our webinar, Frederick and I wanted to take a different approach. Instead of a traditional presentation, we'll be making this more of a discussion style format as we find it more engaging. And of course, as Jay said, we also want to engage with you. So feel free to use our Q&A section to post your questions, and we'll do our best to answer most of them during the end of our session. So, without any further ado, and to set the scene for our discussion, we'll start by looking at where we are now. Understanding the current landscape of alternative fuels is essential before we dive into the challenges and what this means for our crew. So as we can see here in this graph, which is from DNV, it's the latest report we have from DNV. We see that trend of larger ships being ordered with dual fuel propulsion capabilities, which is continuing, indicating that the fuel technology transition is progressing. As illustrated, the uptake of LNG is continuing, but what is new is in the order book, which we will see later on, is that a large number of methanol and LPG fueled ships and the emergence of ammonia as a fuel. So we do see in the graph that the future will be multi-fuel. So currently we see that methanol represents only a very small part, only probably 0.09% of the world fleet, but we do see that in the future it is a different story. Frederick, what do you think is driving this trend?
I think we lost Frederick there. He might have a connection issue. While we wait for him to get back online, I think we could move into the next slide, Dr. Joanna.
Sure, and
And
we
we can
can
come
wait for
we can come back
yes
to
for
this
Frederick.
slide.
Yeah, for sure. And we can wait then for Frederick to comment
Yeah.
on the slide and provide us with his insights. And also the Green Marine Insight, they have a great interest and the great expertise on this matter. So yeah, let's move onwards. It's a live session, so we should expect that.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I just said, methanol fuel ships represent only 0.09% of the world fleet tonnage in operation, but it's almost 10% of the tonnage ordered right now. The container sea segment, which of course, the bigger Maersk is in also, saw a considerable increase in methanol fuel ship orders last year. This trend is still ongoing with 173 methanol-capable container ships on order. And of course, bulk carriers and car carriers are new ship types in the methanol statistics, with 24 and 20 ships being ordered, respectively. Despite the low maturity of ammonia energy converter technology, we have recently started to see the first orders of ammonia fueled ships. However, a major issue we need to underline regarding methanol is that related to other alternative fuels, and specifically ammonia and hydrogen. For methanol, we already have partially developed bunkering infrastructure at 90 ports worldwide. Demonstration of bunkering operation has been successful, and also ship-to-ship bunkering is proven. So, with this in mind, where are we headed? And I think this is the key question we need to answer, as right now the future is still unclear and it's still unknown. Methanol, of course, is gaining traction, no doubt, but let's not forget about ammonia. So, despite its infancy, we've started seeing the first orders for ammonia-fueled vessels. Um, but as we said, methanol already has partially developed bunkering infrastructure. So I think we have Frederick back with us. Frederick, we were discussing the future of alternative fuels and where we are going. So I think that it's a big deal that we have already some bunkering infrastructure for methanol. So what do you think are the challenges we see now and also in the future? Frederick, I think you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. A lot of technical issues on my side today. I apologize. I lost my internet, so
No
I'm joining
worries.
by the phone. Yeah, so yeah, no, I do think that we will continue to see a variety of fuels going forward. I mean, there is not one fuel that will fix all. It all depends on the type of vessel and also the intended trade, if it's short trade, long trade. But if we look at methanol and you compare that with LNG, LPG, ammonia, and even hydrogen, it's a more economical solution. Methanol, is ambient. At ambient temperature, it's a liquid and it's stable, easy, clean and easy to handle. There's no expensive cryogenic infrastructure needed. And I've always promoted that the existing bunker fleet available today can easily be utilized to also supply methanol. And this alone is a huge advantage. There's no need for specialized and expensive tonnage. I mean, bunker vessels. Methanol is also the most traded chemical commodity in the world, making it also available in several ports in the world, as you mentioned earlier. And we also see that e-methanol production facilities is also rapidly increasing. And whilst e-methanol production is increasing, you still have the ability to mix the current existing gray methanol with green, making it also more affordable going forward. So that's my input on this, Joanna.
Yeah, I think what you just said, that there is not just one single fuel that answers all questions, is one key point that I would like us to proceed with, because the adoption of alternative fuels is a multifaceted challenge that requires a holistic approach. So addressing technical, regulatory, economic, environmental, and human resources issues in a coordinated manner is something of a requirement right now. And as you said, there is no single solution here. We have to look at this from multiple angles, and not just focusing only on one angle. So, would you like to take us through some of these challenges, and see if you can change the slide also? Frederick, I think you're muted.
My apologies again. Yeah, I think this slide, all the things that are stated on this slide with the regulatory, technical, human resources, safety, compliance, environmental, economical, they're all equally important. But I would like to, as a forum for today, I'd like to go in to start with technical challenges. So operating with new flashpoint fuels, alternative fuels, requires a stricter level of safety barriers. There's entirely different storage and handling of new fuels, which also creates challenges. I mean, you need greater storage space on board to store the fuel to obtain the same expected endurance as achieved earlier with your conventional fuels. So with that, I mean, we also see with new technology, it's also much more complex, and there is a general lack of widespread expertise and know-how in handling and maintaining these types of new engines for alternative fuels. And that alone is a significant barrier that we see. And we should also take into consideration that when you're operating with new technology, before it's matured, I would say, we will expect to see teething problems until the technology is matured. So it's essential that we are aware of that. But also, with new technology, we can also expect that there will be delays in the supply chain in way of spare parts for alternative fuels, and because the spare part establishment is more or less, it's not established as you can expect or has been for the conventional fuel engines over the years. Looking at technical challenges, you also have to consider the new hazards associated with the physical layout, the operations, maintenance, following any reasonable foreseeable failure, loss of function, component damage, fire, explosion, toxicity. All these things need to be considered. And the more complex technical challenges and stricter regulatory landscape, it's essential that human resources in that sense, as well as training centers, are fully aware and recognize that a successful transition towards decarbonization is of utmost importance. And we need to understand what needs and to be covered in these trainings. And this is difficult to do because we don't have a global standardization of what is required, because that is lagging, and also the knowledge to provide the appropriate training whilst we have the new technology that is frequently being updated. So it is a challenge in the industry today.
Yeah, I think that there are many challenges that we need to take into consideration when we are discussing alternative fuels. But I want to circle back in the HR aspect. And before we go any further, we want to hear from you. So, what is your primary concern when it comes to crew readiness for adopting alternative fuels? You can use the poll to answer, and it will be very interesting to see also your replies on this one. We do see a trend right now forming. I'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes to see what the rest of you is going to reply in the poll. Even though I think we do have a clear winner at this point. Yes, so the top 3 answers so far are insufficient training programs, safety risks, and lack of experience. And we do continue to see this trend in the poll. Of course, you can continue to reply in the poll, but this is very interesting because in June 2024, we had a report from UK Maritime, from the Maritime Skills Commission. The report was about green jobs, and basically, as we will see in the next slide, what this report revealed is that the main barrier to acquiring sustainability or green skills was actually the limited or no availability of training opportunities. So what we have identified right now in this session, it's something that comes up globally also as a requirement within the industry. And of course, we do see that many of the training courses right now or the training solutions right now are too costly. Of course, this is a trend that we see whenever we have a new equipment or a new technology coming into play, that the related training usually comes at a high price point. And of course, the third parameter that this report has identified as a barrier to acquiring green skills is that there is no existing prior knowledge. So basically, the content of the training doesn't extend the knowledge, it doesn't add to what the trainees already knew. And also, it's very curious to see how this correlates with the main influencing factors for acquiring green skills. So, in the same report, we see that most trainees want to acquire green skills or skills related to decarbonization or alternative fuels to improve their career prospects and their opportunities. So they see decarbonization as an enabler for their career growth and for their career trajectory. And I think this is a very important outcome of this report. So Frederick, do you also see this trend that we identified here in this poll, but also this report identifies in your current training programs? Is this a concern you hear from principals and trainees alike?
Yes, Joanna. I mean, I do. If we look at the bottom graph there, you see the limited, basically, training centers. It's too costly. Yeah, it's also a reason why we actually created our own training curriculum. So we've, from our side, we've pioneered methanol as a marine fuel, ordering the first methanol dual fuel engine, and we've been operating with the technology since 2016. And we've learned a lot in those operations. So we've gained more than 200,000 of operating hours on methanol. So with that, gone through the teething problems with new technology, the fact that existing training to prepare crew for what to expect serving on board a dual fuel ship are few and limited, and the mandatory training in way of the IGF code is and has been very LNG oriented. So we identified training gaps, which is why we created our own training curriculum with new, more complex engine technology, as well as fuel handling best practices. You need to ensure that you've done your utmost to ensure that you have qualified crew to operate it. And yes, more specialized training is an additional cost, but the risks of not having trained persons on board is likely to be disastrous. So, I mean, today you have engine producers. They will have their specific training, which are really good and very much needed, but they also center around the engine itself with the dual fuel on the engine. But we have to understand that the engine is only one essential part. You have so much more new components, new technology in way of auxiliary equipment. And you need to fully understand the additional safety features that are put in place to mitigate risk. You need to understand the regulatory framework. You need to understand the working principles of all these systems. And the training that we've prepared over the last 2.5 years is prepared by captains, chief engineers, that have hands-on experience. And our curriculum is constantly updated with real-life experience from the vessels in operation, whereby we go through actual case studies, how to identify and how to manage these. But from Green Marine side, we're also an engineering consultancy, and we've been involved with the design of several ships, several different types of ships, bulkers, container ships, cruise vessels, passenger ships. So assisting owners, not only owners, but also the shipyards directly with the methanol integration. So we also include that experience in our training. So but the fact is that our training serves as an additional supplement to the mandatory IGF code today. So yeah, over to you, Joanna.
I think that what you just said, that from your experience also as a technical consultant, I think you have identified The main problem in the discussion is that in most cases we create trainings that are centered around only the technical components or are centered around the regulatory requirements. So basically, they are like a tick the box exercise, and they do not cater to the actual needs of the seafarers. And the problem is that the maritime green transition hinges on the skills, knowledge, and adaptability of its workforce, our seafarers, and not just technology. We often talk about technology, but the real engine of this change is its people, the skills, knowledge, and adaptability of our workforce. And if we could change the slide, there are two main things that we need to establish, that we need to put proper attention on. The first one is what we just said, the role of human capital. So actually realizing that the people who navigate, that there are people who navigate those vessels, and that engines would just be engines without, the people guiding those ships. And the second component is the maritime educational and training system that we currently have, which we see that in many cases is has not caught up to the expectations and the needs of the industry. So MET institutions must evolve to provide relevant and forward-looking training that aligns with the industry's decarbonization goals. That being said, we have identified three main imperatives. So, of course, we do still need to invest in the technical skills. Like you said, the mastery of the characteristics of alternative fuels, the mastery of engines, of troubleshooting of those engines. But then again, we also need to emphasize on the digital competence that needs to be built. So we need also our crews to be proficient in emerging maritime technologies. And then another important element, which is more of a cultural shift, is the environmental stewardship. So our crews need to understand the impact of operations on sustainability. And as I said, it's more like a cultural shift. And of course, in order to invest in those in the reskilling and upskilling of our crews, there are some challenges specific to this. And the main, of course, are the skill gaps and the training inequalities. And this is something that we need not to shy away from, because in some parts of the world, there are limited training opportunities specifically for decarbonization and alternative fuels, whereas in other parts of the world, we do see that there are training centers that can cater to those needs. And then again, the shipping industry is a traditional industry. So again, we have a cultural shift there. There is a lot of resistance to change, so we need to address both cultural and occupational traditions that we might have within our environment. And the last that we think needs to, it is a challenge at the moment, are the policy and governance hurdles. So basically, we need to ensure global standards and inclusive policy making. And I hope that we will see that with the update of the STCW and the amendment of STCW. It's something that we have been longing for quite a long time. So I think this is a step forward. But and if you can say, change the slide, I think it's important also to see the numbers, just to put things into a perspective. So depending on how aggressively the industry pushes towards decarbonization, we are looking at anywhere between 310,000 to 750,000 seafarers who will need to be trained on alternative fuel technology by 2040s. And of course, this is a huge number. And it emphasizes just how critical the human capital is in this transition. So this will bring us to the next important point in our discussion. What are the current training requirements and how do we ensure our workforce is prepared? And of course, I'm not here to preach you about the IGF code. Of course, the STCW convention sets the baseline for all maritime training, ensuring mandatory safety and operational standards for crew members. And now, specific to alternative fuels, we have the International Code for Safety for ships using gases or other low flash point fuels, or the ITF code, which came into force in 2017, and it governs the training requirements for handling low flash fuels like LNG, methanol, hydrogen, and ammonia. According to the IGF code, all seafarers on ships using these fuels must undergo proper training relevant to their roles and responsibilities, aligned with the SSW convention. Now, there are two levels of certification under the ITF code. So we have the basic training, which is required for seafarers responsible for safety duties, covering the care, use, and emergency response to fuels. And then we have the advanced training, which is for masters, engineer officers, and those with direct responsibility for fuel systems, focusing on more in-depth operational aspects, and this ensures that everyone on board is fully equipped to manage these new fuels safely and effectively. Of course, we see the trend of refresher training also in the case of the ITF code. But what we need to consider is that the landscape of alternative fuels is constantly changing, and our training programs need to reflect that. This is where lifelong learning comes into play. However, it is something that is currently missing as a mentality from the industry. Frederick, would you agree to that? Do you see this also?
Well, I fully agree with that, Joanna. I mean, the technology landscape is really rapidly changing and becoming all the more challenging. And the training curriculum, as mentioned before, that we do is a supplement to the mandatory training. And it was created to fill the gaps with focus to actually prepare a person to familiarize themselves before coming on board a ship with these new systems. It's to prepare them for the technology, its working principles, the regulatory framework, and also the additional safety barriers required, why they are there, why they're put in place to reduce the risks. But also with this supplement training that we provide, we take it one step further. And upon the demand of the customer, we can actually tailor make it, our advanced part of the training, towards the vessel they are intended to serve on. So, I mean, this is a huge advantage when we can go through the actual vessel drawings, the systems, the PID drawings, to really, it's a benefit for the crew to serve on board these vessels, to actually familiarize them actually before they even step foot on the vessel that they're supposed to have a contract on. So this is a huge advantage and something that I think is very much needed in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're saying right now on customization, it's very important because it's what we mentioned earlier. I think that there is no one size fits all. So each company and its vessel, they have their own parameters that we need to understand and address in our training for the training to be actually efficient and make sure that there is the respective knowledge transfer and the applicability of the training in real scenarios. And I think this is a very good path for our next section, which I think is slightly more engaging. And now that we have a good understanding of the current training requirements, let's move on to something more hands-on, the practical side of the training. With new fuels, whether it's LNG, hydrogen, or ammonia, we're facing different combustion characteristics. It's something that we mentioned earlier regarding one of the main challenges that we are facing on alternative fuels. And this brings us to an important point. Why simulation training is so vital when we are dealing with alternative fuels. So why do we need simulation? One key reason is because these fuels behave differently in emergencies. For example, methanol burns with an invisible fire, and ammonia is highly toxic. We need our crews to be able to respond swiftly and effectively to fire-related incidents, as an example. And of course, this is only an aspect that we will be focusing on today. In this high pressure situation, theoretical knowledge just isn't enough. It's crucial to practice these scenarios in a realistic but safe environment. This kind of training ensures that if something happens at sea, the crew is fully prepared, not just in theory, but in practice. We will use firefighting as an example from safety training perspective, as safety training perspective is a key issue. And traditional fire suppression methods may not work as effectively, and the risks to both the crew and the ship can escalate quickly if not handled properly. So we need to equip our teams with the right skills and the right reflexes. That said, while theoretical training is still an important foundation, and of course we're not teaching it, it has its limitation when it comes to preparing crews for high stress real world scenarios. Now, to give you a better idea of what this kind of training looks like in practice, I'm going to pass over to our instructor, Jay Kumar, who will be demonstrating some key aspects of the firefighting training needed for handling alternative fuels. Of course, we won't be seeing any real fires here today. We'll leave that to a recorded video from one of our sessions. So over to Sayyu Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Joanna. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar once again. As we are exploring alternate fuels such as LNG and methanol, it's crucial to understand their behavior in the event of a fire or spill, as they differ significantly from traditional fossil fuels like diesel oil or heavy fuel oil. So let's delve into these differences and what they mean for safety and response strategies. In the IGF basic course, apart from whatever theory lessons we are learning, one of the key focus areas is the practical firefighting part. Shortly, you will see a video where you will observe the challenges with firefighting LNG and methanol fires. G, can you please play the video? In our firefighting facilities in Denmark and in India, we try to simulate some scenario that would depict the real life scenarios on board a vessel. For example, a leak from a pipeline or a flange or a valve from a valve gland. What you just saw in the video and what is being displayed on the screen, you can see that the scenario is basically a leak from an LNG pipeline. The point here to note is that despite using large volumes of water, it's very difficult to extinguish the fire unless the source is isolated. Also, another challenge with LNG fires is that the heat radiated is 3 times higher than any normal fire with oil. So you can easily feel the heat wave several meters away from the point of fire. In the first part of the video, you must have noticed the participants checking the temperature of the bulkhead. That is just to show how hot a point can get when due to the LNG fire. G, can we continue the video, please? In this part of the video, you will see methanol fire and the challenges with it. In contrast to the LNG fires, methanol fires behave quite differently. What you're seeing in the screen is a flame that is originating from an oil fire. We have kept 2 buckets, one with diesel oil and the other with methanol. The empty bucket has methanol in it and this is also on fire and is burning. But you don't see the flames because the flames are not visible to human eye. And this is due to the physical and chemical properties of methanol. This is something important which we should be aware of. So how do we deal with such fires is the next question. The answer is, we will see it shortly in the video. G, can we continue playing the video, please? What you're seeing in the screen is a thermal imaging camera, and you can clearly see 2 flames. You will need such cameras for detecting and extinguishing any flames with methanol. Additionally, because methanol is highly toxic, the firefighters need to wear chemical retardant suits for protection. Whereas LNG fires doesn't require any such specialized suits. Also, when you're trying to fight methanol fires with the dry powder extinguisher, you can see the flames due to the reaction with dry powder. And it also seemed like the fire is spreading, but is actually not. And that's what you will observe in the next part of the video. Jay, can we continue playing the video, please? Yeah, that's Peter, our maritime instructor in Denmark. In the simulator training, what you're seeing in the screen, the primary focus is basically to familiarize the participants with bunkering operations. For both LNG and methanol bunkering, several critical tasks must be performed prior to the actual bunkering process. For example, in the case of LNG bunkering, the lines have to be cooled to minus 161 degrees. Additionally, inerting of lines is required, both prior and after bunkering, just to ensure that the lines are in non-hazardous state. This training also includes simulated exercises that demonstrate smooth changeover of fuels from in the main engine between alternate and conventional fuels. And this is to ensure that the participants are very much aware of these changeover procedures before they board a vessel. See, we can play the video, please. Hope this video was both informative and insightful. And the feedback what we received from the first few batches of the participants were also quite positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jayakumar. I think we're almost towards the end of our webinar, so thank you to everybody who's really stuck with us for the full hour. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so we move into the Q&A portion of our session, and I see we only have a couple of questions that are in our section here. If you have any questions now, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We have one question from Manu Mangal. What are the key points to keep in mind to ensure that when buying methanol or any other alternative fuel, the complete supply chain is sustainable? Perhaps Dr. Joanna or Frederick, if you'd like to tackle this one, please go ahead. Floor is yours.
I think Frederick can take it, even though by reading the question, I think we can write a complete thesis on this one.
No, the question was that how we ensure that the whole supply chain is sustainable. Well, yeah, I mean, that depends on how you want to see it, because now you have e-methanol production, which is rapidly ramping up. It's not available in the volumes you need today with the ships coming out, but I believe with the demand, the supply will come. I mean, the majority of e-methanol today is being produced out of China, actually, and these are all the certified methanol. But we're also involved with fingerprinting testing to ensure that you can actually. There are studies to measure the carbon, because methanol will always have, for example, if we're talking about methanol will have a carbon. It always has a carbon, but when it's produced by electrolysis, it will have let's say, it's not an old carbon, so to speak. I'm not a chemist in that way, so how they do that test, but that is ongoing, and that's a method of testing whether how new or old that carbon is in methanol. So that is sustainable. And then if you look at the supply chain, will we see in the future also that the bunker vessels being used also use the e-methanol to carry the methanol to the receiving vessel for bunkering? So it's a difficult question to answer, really, that you had. So, but I do believe that what we see in the future is that with more e-fuels, or so to speak, as the demand grows, you will also see the supply. We saw the same incident when we had IMO 2020. Will we have enough of this low sulfur fuels? And it was available when we needed it. So in this case, it's a bit more challenging. It takes time to build these plants up, but I think it is coming. And in order to meet IMO 2050 targets, that until then we can use gray and e-methanol blended until we have more available e-methanol. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Fredrik.
Just a short comment from my side. I think one of the words that I would like to stay on this question is complete. So what we mean when we say complete supply chain, because many times when we are discussing about the sustainability of alternative fuels, we are mainly focusing on production. And if we add to the mix the completeness, the holistic way of viewing sustainability for the supply chain, then also we need to take into account the certainty of future supply. We need to take into account the scalability and future proofing of those fuels. And also another thing that I believe we should take into account is the end-use emissions and recycling. So yeah, I think if we want to tackle this question in a more holistic way, the industry should not only focus on production, but also focus on transportation, storage, future supply, and all those aspects related to a more holistic view.
The complete supply chain, so to say. Yeah. We'll move on to the next question for the interest of time. We have 6 minutes left. What are the estimates of Scope 2 and Scope 3 carbon emissions in producing the proposed alternative fuels? Can one of our speakers please volunteer with an answer?
Fredrik, do you want to go ahead with this one?
Yeah, sorry, I don't really. Can you repeat the question, G?
Yeah. What are the estimates of Scope 2 and Scope 3 carbon emissions in producing the proposed alternative fuels?
Yeah. So Scope 2 and Scope 3, are you referring to the IMO strategy then? This question back to the questionnaire, but yeah, it's like I say, I mean, you have those that have gone out and said they want to go from a certain point of emission today straight down to net zero using, in this case, I'll use methanol, for example, with e-methanol. But as it kind of goes back to the question that was presented earlier. Again, it's all about supply and demand. And right now, we don't see there is not sufficient supply for the methanol ships being built today if you're going to go on e-methanol. A solution to that is to use a blend of gray and e-methanol, which also makes the fuel more affordable. So the challenge why we also don't see a bigger ramp up with alternative fuels ships being ordered is that the ship owners don't know which direction it's going to go. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world with with regards to fuel. What is the alternative fuel going to cost? And that's a major significant question to be considered. These are large investments having to be made, and you want to make it right. And also the supply chain. How will I get the fuel to my ship? Is it available in the various ports? So it's a difficult question, but again, with more demand, supply will come, is what I believe in. The technology is there, it works. So building a new ship today, in my opinion, if you do not, you have to, in order to meet the stricter IMO greenhouse gas strategies, you have to make a choice, and that choice is towards alternative fuels, because otherwise you're not going to meet it. You can only do so many technical improvements on your ship, but that's only going to take you small steps towards that journey on the IMO greenhouse gas emissions. So you have to, in order to meet the whole way, you have to go towards an alternative fuel, and e-methanol is one of those good alternatives.
Thank you, Fredrik. We have time for one more question, and we do only have one more question. So if we could just keep our answers quite short on this one. Have you or will you include non-technical skills in your training? And in that case, which ones?
On the Maersk training side or on Green Marine side?
Both, because we're partners.
Go ahead, Fredrik.
No, okay. I mean, we do have the mandatory IGF, both basic and advanced, which Joanna presented earlier. And the advanced part is more for the senior officers that are in charge of the bunkering as well. But the supplement training that we provide, yes, we do have one also divided into a basic, which is for the general all crew. And it goes into more of the properties of methanol in specific here, and the properties of methanol, health aspects, safety aspects, fire aspects, the hazards of it, emergency response. But then into the advanced part, that is where it gets more technical, and we go into the details of the ship systems. Yeah.
I'd be interested to know, as well, as with Maersk training, we always try to incorporate human factors into a lot of what we do. So that would be, I think, an interesting element to include as well. All right. Well, we just have a couple more slides in case anybody was curious where we offer these trainings right now. And I'm allowed to plug that in because this is our webinar after all. We have our trainings in Svendborg in Denmark and Chennai in India, and Green Marine also has their facility in Manila, the Philippines, my motherland. So if anybody has any questions about this, please feel free to reach out. We do have one more poll, and that is, how did we do today? Please let us know. If you have any further questions about the trainings that we do, both for Green Marine and Maersk training, please do reach out to us or to one of the commercial team members that you might already know. And that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.